So 1 minute has passed. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Innovation Management in Time of Crisis, using patent analytics to make data-driven decisions. My name is Monique Stouten and I am a Business Development Manager at patent site LexisNexis. And I have some housekeeping rules during this webinar. This webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link to access it in a follow-up email. You can download the slides from the system on the handout section, as you can see on the slide. And you have any questions during the presentation, please send us that via the question section. Furthermore, I would like to introduce our expert panelists. The first is Dr. Sabani Chappopadhyay. He is a junior consultant at patent site LexisNexis and has a PhD in biochemistry, having research experience in the field of computational biology, peptides and proteins, with LLM degree in European and transnational IP and IT law. The next I would like to present is Karsten Guderian. He is a senior project leader at patent site LexisNexis and is a lecturer at the Friedrich Alexander University in Erlangen-Nuremberg, Germany. He graduated in business administration and economics at the Christian Albrecht University in Kiel, Germany, and was a researcher at the WHO Otto Beisheim School of Management in Germany and is a visiting research fellow at the Kellogg School of Management of Northwestern University in the USA. And his research focuses on patent analytics, patent valuation, and investment decisions. The last panelist I would like to introduce is Dr. Peter Beckham. He is a professor at the Chair of Technology Management at the Friedrich Alexander University in Erlangen-Nuremberg, Germany. He holds a doctoral degree from the WHO Otto Beisheim School of Management in Germany and was a visiting research fellow as well at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University in the USA. His research centers on the strategic management of technology and entrepreneurship, especially the integration of intellectual property rights regimes like patents and trademarks. And I would like to give the word over to Peter.
Monique, thank you so much for the introduction. Really great. Hello to everyone. I'm really happy that you're all joining our session today. It's really great. We'll see we have a small team here. We had already welcome greetings in. Then we generally will start about common innovation management responses to crisis. So our topic today is crisis, which is, by the way, a great day today to talk about crisis. You see my black shirt? That's because I'm a Germany fan. And as most of you, at least those who are based in Europe know, yesterday we got defeated by the British, or maybe we didn't get defeated by the British, but defeated ourselves. I mean, that's a debate which might be even bigger than any crisis debate afterwards. But you know, that's why I'm still in crisis mode, and that's why also my mood might not be the best throughout. So please excuse myself, you know, it's really hard to lose against the British. I mean, to lose in general, but then against the British is really, really hard for us. Well, and then we'll show our approach, you know, to crisis, what we did, you know, with innovation management, times of crisis, and we'll finish our session today, our webinar today, you know, with a Q&A session. So we've talked about crisis, and somehow it feels now through the whole COVID-19 times that we're in. I mean, it feels like we're still somehow stuck in the middle. I mean, we all have the feeling that COVID-19 somehow is over now, and especially, you know, with the talking again about the British, the great example of how the British, you know, moved with the vaccination rates down, really got their incidence values down to basically almost zero down, same in Israel. But now those are rising back again. So now in England, it's again above 100, which is at least in Germany, one of the key measures, you know, to see, wow, things are really getting bad. So we'll see. Most of us who were really confident and really positive about that the crisis might now be over, let's say in the last phase of it, are again struggling a bit. But what we're talking now, and that stems from a research project that we really started, you should say on the onside, really at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, roundabout in March, April of 2020. And it's already got published, which is really nice in here. And the paper that we wrote together was Karsten, Sabani, you know, from patent side both, that have already been introduced, and also Frederick Ria, who is a researcher at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. we together wrote a paper on innovation management in crisis, patent analytics as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's how basically this project started. And most what you'll see today really stems from the project and is building on the project. I mean, we also worked afterwards, and we'll see in the presentation parts from Sabine and Carsten that there's some new ideas and new things that developed afterwards I will show also. So we've seen that when the corona, the COVID-19 crisis really hit, I mean, first stock markets plummeted. So I mean, I know my shares, at least, they all went totally down, and still my great investments in tourism never recovered really. So kind of, but now some are again dropped, whatever. Don't want to bother with that. But we'll see that those really crisis situations like with COVID-19, they really affect firms' innovation management and decision making. And like in every good crisis, I mean, there could be a bad and a good side. And one good side could be that sometimes crisis is seen as opportunities. So some firms are really great then to use the crisis situation and say, okay, well, we use it and we change maybe our market or business model. And again, sorry for me to divert into football. We've seen the same with Germany when they really dropped out, were competing catastrophically bad in 2002 in the European, no, in 2000, the European Championship there. That basically then they used this kind of shock to totally change how the recruiting system worked, how young people, how young, in this case, young boys, taught football. And in the end, it culminated in the World Cup victory in 2014. So really in this case, I mean, the German Football Association used kind of the crisis they were in to somehow really reinvent themselves. Let's see if that's happening now even too. But often the most response that firm use is, well, okay, we got a crisis. We don't know what's going to be tomorrow. So what we do, we cut down on costs. So just cost. And it doesn't matter what it is. So most of them, cut down innovation on innovation capabilities, reduce innovation projects without any idea about thinking about which might be useful enough. And when you're in the situation that you're a decision maker, then of course you must react quickly and fast. But the point is, often you just simply rely on your gut feeling. So, I mean, that's sometimes it's good to rely on your gut feeling, but often it would be great if you would have something harder, maybe some empirical evidence, at least, or an idea to base our decisions on. And this somehow drove our research project then to the research question on how innovation management decision in times of crisis, like we had or still have, unfortunately, with COVID-19 pandemic, can be improved through publicly available data. And we at least thought, well, publicly available data on firms, we thought maybe patent data and patent analytics in here could help us somehow to base our decisions not only on our experience and gut feeling, but maybe get somehow a kind of solid empirical understanding below. And before we really went into the analysis and thought, okay, which firms can we look at, which kind of industries could we analyze, we thought, okay, well, how have maybe situations of crisis been handled in the past, and are there any ideas on innovation management, for example? So is there already some literature on prior events where innovation management and crisis have been linked together? And there is some literature out there, and we see the crisis influence innovation management, which is no surprise. I mean, of course it influences innovation management, we've seen that. But in here, what we've seen mostly, we have an upside and downside. And for the downside, often it says, of course, we raised uncertainty, then its complexity, it gets more ambiguous. And as mentioned, gut feeling, pretty unpredictable sometimes what to do. And innovation activities actually de facto are reduced. In some firms, they really stop or at hold. Because those firm leaders said, no matter what happens, we first need to ensure firm survival. That means costs down. If you don't get revenues in, means the classic, you have only two sides, increase revenues or lower costs for your firm performance. So basically then, what should we do? Revenues just plummeted. What can we do? We have to reduce and work on the cost side. But on the upside, sometimes firms see, okay, there are already trends happening. So maybe for some trends, and this is one of the big trends that we all know that we all see today, because we're now kind of in a digital meeting, if you want to call it like this, that maybe we can use these shock events now and really try to push digitalization forward. So sometimes firms adapt really to shifting market requirements or in general requirements, and might somehow react to new crisis-induced necessities and use those to come out even stronger afterwards. And innovation here can be a path out of crisis-induced valuation. But of course, the problem is when you cut down costs, so how can you then on the other side really increase innovation or use this innovation to come up really with solutions that help you out of the pandemic. And sometimes radical change is kind of implemented. I mean, for some firms, it's really great to have a crisis situation because they can use it to say, okay, now we can maybe induce change that was impossible before. And even though it might not fit perfectly, but you think about the automotive industry. So before we all were running on fossil fuel, the internal combustion engine automobiles. And now during this pandemic, really the kind of awareness everywhere and the openness for radical change is even there in, those big ships like Volkswagen saying, okay, now we turn to carbon-free or emission-free vehicles and switch now on, I don't think it's 2025 or 2030 for Audi, switch totally to electronic transportation, basically. So basically an electronic motor. So some firms will use that to the crisis, to use that to radically influence innovation management. But it's not only the relation between innovation management and crisis. You see that on the right side. So these are basically the big fields that we're looking at. We have innovation management on one side, the crisis, when you want to call it research on one side, and then patents on the other side. And of course, innovation management and patent in research are pretty often linked and pretty used. So we'll see that firms often rely on intellectual property and especially patents to appropriate returns. And this is, of course, from pharmaceuticals, you know it. But even when you look in other fields, you see that patents play really a big role there. The advantage of patents is they're publicly available. Then they're really at least the most objective data source that you can get about firms, innovation teams freely get, or let's say openly available, get in there. And they offer unique insights in technology and business activities. Not only that firms were doing in the past, but when you see a newly registered patents, that surface, then so that are already published, you might be seeing activities, and sometimes patent activities between filing, the invention, when you file it, and then until you see something of those patents end up, maybe those inventions you originally had, end up in some products or services, might take 5 to 10 years, whatever. So maybe this gives you also a glimpse into the future to see, okay, which firms maybe, which activities might then in the future at some point really be active on the scheme. Even for you, maybe monitoring for competition, whatever. And this is something we find in prior literature a lot, saying, okay, yes, they might give us insights, not only in the past, but also in the future. And now patent analytics is something that came up, I won't say recently, but more in the recent years to be stronger. Before, even sometimes we were only counting patents, doing nothing fancy on it, but now it's more and more the trend to using kind of qualitative information on patents and using patent analytics to measure really R&D or innovation activities. And one of those kind of patent analytics in there is the use of patent value indicators to really see, okay, well, a patent itself doesn't tell you anything about if it's valuable or not. So maybe we might need to analyze the information that is stored in the patent data, and also over maybe various regions, whatever, to come up with different metrics and different indicators to see if there is really patents that are valuable or not, because we have usually the skewness of patent values and commercial applicability. So often it depends also on firm strategies. You have firms that patent everything, but maybe all of those patents, only really very little few patents carry value in there. When you think of pharmaceuticals, mainly the patent that is somehow the invention of that found the compound or secured the compound is the kind of most valuable patent in there, and the other ones are kind of more shielding around or a bit side patents, I would say. So what we have now, the relation between innovation management and crisis, and the relation between innovation management and patents. And what we would like to do now, and if you recall maybe our research question, which was like, can innovation management decisions in time of crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic be improved through publicly available data? About that, so how could they work together? And we have really only very few prior literature, or only few early attempts where they link really the propositions to overcome the crisis and intellectual property to really say, how can intellectual property help us maybe to better steer and navigate through the crisis and emerge, in best case, even stronger afterwards than before? And we have still this constant trade-off. I mean, even when we say we want to use it proactively, in crisis, I mean, if we earn less, then we earn less. So we still have this constant trade-off between cost reduction on one side and still ensuring maybe the continued protection of the uniqueness that are our inventions, that are maybe our ideas at some point, or that is really our selling proposition, our business model, and what we want to secure over time. So think about how can we really combine all those innovation management, literature from Crisis together, and patents, and then see how that all might work, that in the end, firms who are good in managing and navigating this field, depending on their individual business models, to navigate this field and come out even stronger out of Crisis. And with our research project here, with Sabine and Carsten, and they presented now in a second, we had different cases. We looked at different firms, which are also high in the media. And some point, maybe you didn't know before, but now everybody knows them. So they're going to present those cases in. But before we go to those cases, we have a poll question for you. So it's not that you're just sitting around here, lean back and say, okay, well, we let those guys talk. No, we would like to know from you in this quick poll. So what we'd like to know is, what do you base your decisions on in times of crisis? And you can select one of the following, like, is it financial data? Is it customer data? Is it patent data? Is it more like instinct, gut feeling? Or is it somehow a mix of everything, like kind of all of the above? So please, and be honest, of course, we always like honest answers in there. And for the results of the quick poll and the next parts of the results of our research, I would like to hand over to Carsten.
Okay, so most of you have actually answered, hello and welcome everyone, by the way, that you've used all of the above. So that is 63% there. And we do see that none of you have decided to use patent data for crisis responses. So that is, of course, an interesting result for us. And we'd like to take this a step further. And maybe, we can fill in that gap or that void and, show you some of the opportunities that exist in using patent data for crisis responses. Now, we've already heard from Peter that one of the common issues that companies face that are subject to a crisis, if we look back at the financial crisis or the COVID pandemic now, is that budget needs to be freed because, projects are otherwise killed or terminated. And so what we want to achieve is that, projects are maintained, that innovation activity continues to excel. And in order for that to happen, we did need money. So one of the opportunities that we would have is we could look at the portfolio of our own company and then identify potential options on which patents we might not maintain. As you may know, if you have a patent, you do not only need to get it through the grant process, but also you need to maintain it over time and then pay maintenance fees. And one of the opportunities could be to actually, identify those patents that might not be needed in the future, and then, release those or sell them even, and then, have patents in for yourself, and requires getting some money that can then be spent on innovation activity. So what we've done here is we've plotted the portfolio of a random company in this case. And what we did was we looked at the entire portfolio. So that considers subsidiaries and subsidiaries patents as well, not just those of a parent entity. So all of the patents that are controlled by a company or a patent owner in this case. And then what we have done is we've looked at the two citation-based measures, the so-called internal technology relevance and the external technology relevance. Technology relevance being the number of forward citations patents received, but corrected for common issues that impede the usability of forward citations. So the patent age, the citation propensity in different technology fields, and the different citation propensities at different patent offices. And then we also discern between citations that stem from the owner's own portfolio, so the common self-citations that you might be aware of, and also those citations that come from other third-party portfolios. And so what we do here is we then chart these individual patent families by these two indicators, so internal technology relevance and external technology relevance, and then we achieve 4 quadrants. The way that we define these 4 quadrants is that we calculate the average internal technology relevance and the average external technology relevance for the specific company. And then we achieve these 4 quadrants. And so if we look to the top right, to that quadrant, we do see those patent families that have an above average internal technology relevance and those that have an above average external technology relevance at the same time. So these are patents that receive on average more citations than the averages from their own company. So it's a patent that is probably relevant to the business model of this company, but also more citations from other parties. So it's also something that is of interest to the competition. And so these would definitely be the patents that we would probably keep, maintain, and hence try to enforce if possible. If we then take a look at the quadrant on the bottom right, we do see those that are still have an above average internal technology relevance. So lots and lots of citations coming in from patents that are part of the same portfolio, but at the same time in a lower or below average in external technology relevance. So these are patents that are quite frequently cited by the company itself, but not by the competition. So these would probably be patents that you would like to preemptively maintain, as these are relevant to your own business model, but not necessarily to that of the competition. If we then check the bottom left, we do see those that score below average internal and below average external technology relevance values. So basically, they receive fewer than average citations both from the company and from the competition. So for us, this means that these could be patents that are not really required for the business of the specific company, nor for the competition, and to keep a good balance of power position. So these might be patents that we can then consider ready for abandonment. I will come back to this in a minute. And then if we take a look at the top left quadrant, we do see those that score below average on the internal technology relevance metric, but above average on the external technology relevance metric. So these are patent families that are not really required for the business model of our specific company again, but then they are quite heavily cited by the competition. So these could be potential patent families that we could either use as licensing or as sales options, or in other ways if we need to interact with the competition, as these are patents that are most often more relevant to our competition than our own company. And so what we have done then is we've actually, at the time, there were all these news about Adidas in the media, and that Adidas would like to basically stop paying rents for their shops or retail stores simply because these were all closed for COVID. And so what we just thought is, well, let's take a look, how Adidas could save money on their portfolio in terms of, which patents might not be necessary for them to maintain if we look at the business model. And so what we have done is we've actually charted the entire portfolio of Adidas. And as you can see here, I did not put down all of the patent families, because in total they actually have 455 patent families in their portfolio. But we've taken a look into, or just what we're displaying here is just those patents that actually are part of this group that we consider licensing and sales candidates. Sabani, if you click one more, thank you. What you'll be seeing is that we have the portfolio size at 455, and the external technology relevance for Adidas was at 3.0, whilst the internal technology relevance was at 0.8. So after all, you could see that on average, Adidas portfolio was gaining more citations externally than from internal patents, which is of course nothing that is uncommon. And what we could also identify at the time was that the remaining lifetime of Adidas portfolio was at about 12.3 years. So still, there was a lot of potential. And what we then did is we then looked into the individual quadrants and identified those patent families that could be considered relevant for each of these areas. And what you do see here is that we identified 81 patent families that could potentially serve as candidates for sales or licenses. And we found 197 patent families that could be considered potential abandonment candidates, lots and lots of potential to save on cost. If you then check on the average technology relevance scores for these, you do see that there is a substantial difference on average for each of these groups. Now, of course, the same analysis could be done if we decided not to use the technology relevance and use those corrections to forward citations that impede the usability of those forward citations. We could also use just general self-citations and third-party citations, for example, or different metrics. But I would generally advise to use citation metrics for this. Now, however, important is that this should only be kind of considered as the first step. There might be other identification opportunities. I just mentioned the citation, but instead of looking at the entire portfolio, you might want to disregard some of these patents that we have as part of our portfolio. So maybe you do not want to consider those that are part of litigation, be that that they have been attacked, or you deliberately want to take a look at those. Maybe if you click one more, Shabani, that would be excellent, then you can see it. Thank you. Or if you know that some patents are part or make revenues in certain authorities, or you have patents in other less important classes, you might deliberately choose to include or exclude them as you start this analysis, because there's analysis based on the internal and external technology relevance should only be considered as kind of the first step in a multi-step process. As a second step, I would then definitely take a look, which is charted to the right here on this slide. I would definitely check on a couple of additional things. So I would not discard all of those 197 patent families for Adidas, but you might want to take a look into, okay, which firms cite these patents? They might receive below average internal and external citations, but maybe all of these external citations stem from one of the close competitors, be that from Puma, Nike, or anyone else. Or patents might be considered so-called niche patents, so patents that have been cited below average, but they're only used by the company for one or two specific projects and hence are important. Or patents might, even though they're not cited a lot, be important for the organizational path dependency, or the way that the companies have created different technologies. So there are various things that I would watch out in addition. So discarding all of them is probably not a good opportunity, but we can consider this as a first step to identify a set of patents that might serve as abandonment, licensing, or sales candidate, and then continue to dig deeper into this. Important here is also.
Yeah,
Yes?
thank you, Karsten. We have a question. What is then actually the next step then that the company can take if they have made such a first decision? They have a potential pool that they want to abandon. What would be the next step?
Well, if they have identified a pool that they would like to abandon, then of course I would reach out to my legal support team to identify what can happen there. And the second thing that I would, or if it makes sense or not, something that could also happen, of course, is that you decide not to abandon the patents in their entirety, but maybe only specific authorities. So dropping independent documents or specific documents might be something that could be done. What I would like to maybe with my last slide show is the potential that exists in looking at these. So of course, again, here we do not have any internal information. All that we did was we looked at the portfolio and we used these indicators to kind of identify the potential in the first step. But what we do see here is we've charted the annuity fees, so those maintenance fees that have to be paid to the different patent offices by Adidas throughout the next couple of years. And what we do see here is that looking at the abandonment and these licensing candidates, there is substantial money that could potentially be saved. Again, it's not likely that you are going to abandon all of them, but maybe just a subset. But there's still substantial money that could then be used to pay those retail rent stores fees, or maintain innovation activities, keep up some projects. So there's definitely potential there. So yeah, that's something that you could do in order to free budget for innovation analytics there. Thank you.
Thank you, Karsten. So that was one of the ways in which, as Peter pointed out, patent analytics can be used as an opportunity. And so this is another way where you need not just get rid of your innovations, but also find a way in which you can even keep both innovating as well as lowering down your cost. The other thing that we did while we were working on this, the paper that we published, is can any way we can use patents, the analytics from patents, to address the immediate crisis that we are facing. So yes, we always look into patents as they are the markers for the future, how the future development of a technology can look like. But what we can also look at what is already known based on the patents that are already in the public eye. Now, when we started, and this is another aspect of using patent analytics as a crisis response. Here, the example is definitely, as Peter pointed out, we have been in this since long, this COVID-19, and when it started, we were aware that there is no treatment, no vaccine against it. So then, while Karsten was working on this aspect of how can patent analytics help the firms to still maintain their innovation while reducing cost, the other thing was how or whether we can even use any information from patents to be able to find an immediate solution based on what is already known. The way we approached this is markedly different from generally how patent searching is done. So what we did to address this specific question is we did not do a conventional patent search where the focus is to find all the patents that are related to a particular technology. Here we wanted to find the key patents. So by key patents, we wanted to find out whether there are discrete, explicit information in the patent documents where the inventions are directly related to the treatment and vaccination for the coronavirus family. So what was already known when the COVID-19 outbreak started is that the virus that is causing this outbreak, it is a coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, which belongs to the same family as the SARS or the MERS virus belongs to. So this is the coronavirus family. For this crisis response based analytics using patents, what we did was we used keywords which are specific to the coronavirus family for the start. And then we searched for these keywords in only title or abstract of the patent documents in combination with the related IPC or CPC classes. IPC is the International Patent Classification. CPC is the Cooperative Patent Classification. As I mentioned, this is not an approach to retrieve all patents that are related to this, but to retrieve those patents that explicitly disclose that the inventions are related directly to the coronavirus family, because it's mentioned in the title or the abstracts. Now, when we talk about this, the hypothesis is if there is a patent, that means that these key patent owning entities will have the know-how to be able to contribute in addressing this crisis situation. And the second thing that comes up is if not only because you have the know-how, but also whether you yourself are capable of contributing to this or not, or you need collaboration. Because patents, R&D in terms of healthcare, it's not only done by the established companies, but also by the research institutes and the universities. And I'll come to that part today. But being able to identify it was the first step, as Carsten's project had the first step of identifying the patent pool. This was the first step in identifying who can be the key patent owning entities. What are these key patents? What are these key know-how which can potentially contribute to the immediate response that is required? Once we did that, when the first thing that we checked, and we retrieved very few patents, that's expected because the focus was very constricted and very concentrated in only title and abstracts. The first glimpse of a kind of a correlation that we got was the filing statistics trend. As you see, the number of patent families filed each year that satisfy the search criteria that we had, we found that even for these few patents, the trend follows the actual scenario as it happened. There's an increasing filing activity after 2002, which was the year of SARS outbreak. And then there's an increasing filing activity after 2012, which was the time of the MERS outbreak. What we actually found was that some of the patents that were filed are already inactive, but some are still active. So it seems that 2 points here. Has a patent gone inactive as of today does not necessarily mean that the know-how is not worthy enough. The know-how can still be utilized in collaboration, in combination with some other new know-how. Or it could be that the know-how is still good enough to be used, and you need not worry about the patent enforcement because it's already inactive. The active ones, the recently filed ones, are expected to relate to new kind of inventions which were not there during the SARS outbreak, but which can be utilized for this COVID-19 outbreak. Keeping this in mind, we went ahead to find out further in details about what we get about the patents. When we use patent cite, as Carsten showed the indicator being based on forward citation, we use the average quality for the patent families that we retrieved, where the forward citation as well as the market coverage, which is the protection strategy, is taken into account to analyze the patents and evaluate the patent quality. As I said, the number of patents we retrieved for each of these entities are very few because our search was very concentrated. But in May 2020, we did that. We found these entities like Moderna and CureVac. At that point of time, there were just a few words being discussed about these entities. Side by side, we also retrieved Sanofi, GlaxoSmithKline as the key patent owning entities in our very focused approach. Two things came up from this when we looked into the details of these patents. The first is the retrieved patents. We found that the spike protein, now all the SARS, the MERS, the COVID-19 virus, they have this crown-like appearance. That's why they're called coronavirus, because of the spike protein. The patterns that we got, we understood that this spike protein is majorly used for the immunogenic response, to generate the immunogenic response in the body. So we understood that whatever has been researched upon, whatever we could understand from our focused search, is that this is one of the way that has been tried and tested by patent owning entities in generating immunogenic response in the body. Most of the vaccines that have reached the society already, they are all using the spike protein. The other thing that we understood is the different vaccine technologies from this handful of patents that we retrieved. So we found not only conjugate vaccine, subunit vaccine, adenovirus-based vaccine, but also mRNA-based vaccine has been researched upon against these viruses. So the thing is, when we retrieved Moderna, when we retrieved CureVac, we found that they have mentioned the applicability of the mRNA vaccines in fight against either MERS or SARS, along with that can be used in cancers as well. So as Carsten's project pointed out, the first step, this gave us the first step that these are the two areas where majorly we can have a look and do further analysis on. I'll still keep our analysis for today's overview for the first step. When we understood this, we narrowed this down. We used the COVID spike protein related keywords, but we still searched for it in the title or the abstract, because we still wanted to have those patent owning entities who explicitly disclose their invention is in this area. This is what we retrieved in 2020 when we ranked the patent owning entities. And we actually got Oxford Innovation and the University of Oxford. Only one patent that we retrieved, but these were in the top 20 based on the patent site KPIs. If you check for today, and when we do this, we repeat the search, Carsten told me, try to find out what has happened after 1 year has passed since we wrote the paper. So I checked it, and to my surprise, I didn't find this patent. So I don't find University of Oxford. The Government of United Kingdom as a patent owning entity was there, it's still there, but they are not there. So this actually became a surprise to us, that why isn't there, and we looked into it, and I'll show you what happened. In 2020, when we did the analysis and we published the paper, the patent that we had retrieved that satisfied our search criteria was this one. This was a PCT application that was filed by the University of Oxford and Oxford Innovation. And this mentions that this is a spike protein-based method for generating immunogenic response against the MERS virus. So this is how we had started. This is what we wanted to find out, that whether we can find key patents, whether we can find key contributor to these patents. This is the patent due to which Oxford Innovation featured in our list. When we went ahead and we checked the news, you will see, and this is interesting, that the adenovirus-based vector is being used, and this is the ChAd-OX1 that was mentioned in the patent. When we check the news, this is what AstraZeneca has licensed, a non-exclusive license from Oxford University, which is based on this ChAd-OX1 adenovirus-based vector, and this is a spike protein-based vaccine that has reached the society. As Peter started, that the UK had been so successful in controlling the outbreak using the AstraZeneca vaccine. This is the vaccine that has reached the society. However, as I told you, as Carsten told me to see, I found out that this is not active anymore. And when we checked it, we find that this has gone inactive. So we wanted to check the legal status of it. And you see, when we did the analysis in May 2020, it was still active, so it featured. But later in December 2020, this PCT application did not enter the national phase. What happened is that while this patent was in application stage, AstraZeneca had the collaboration. They took the non-exclusive license for a pending patent from University of Oxford, generated the vaccine, brought it to the society, used it as a crisis response. And the international search report that came out for this patent that was filed in 2018, it was not very promising. So University of Oxford did not went ahead to pursue the patent anymore. The patent went inactive in December. However, the work was done. the science that the patent disclosed was used to address this, this crisis. This is one of the steps when the first step led to something that we didn't expect, but we were happy about it, that this way science patents did contribute to the crisis response. What is actually still active is this patent, which is still an adenovirus-based vaccine patent for University of Oxford. And they do disclose that it is taken from the chimpanzee adenovirus. ChAd-OX1 is also a chimpanzee adenovirus-based vaccine, which is encoded by this one. But that patent is no longer active, but this one is. So this is a concrete example where patent analytics can be used successfully, as in Carsten's project, as in our project, to have an insight, to give you a road to walk on, to find probable solutions to the crisis that we are facing. Having these two cases, I'll go back to Peter to summarize and give us more insight about what we now saw as a concrete example. So I give the baton back to Peter.
And that's perfect. Sabani, Carsten, thank you so much for the great results and great presentation. And that's exactly also what from our paper was kind of the key contribution what you really showed. We've seen, and that was, I mean, everybody's seen now in the examples we had, that patent-based information really allows to derive or implement kind of database strategic decisions. I mean, you could use this information, that's what you've seen from Carsten, for example. Well, should we get rid of some patents or not? Maybe should we license them out, just abandon them completely? And really to use this patent-based information to overcome the crisis, especially now the current COVID-19 pandemic, and not solely, you know, being somehow forced or being somehow, yeah, everybody likes this gut feeling, but it's really something that having data at hand that might support your decision helps firms a lot to go forward. And even you could use, and a good friend of mine has read our paper recently, said, Peter, you should have shown me the paper in 2020, because if I've seen your results, especially Zabani ones, you know, the ones on the CureVac and Moderna, I would have invested in Moderna and CureVac, you know, I would become rich and could stop working now. So you see also on the, not only on the side of innovation managers, but maybe then using this innovation capabilities, and especially, I mean, I know how hard Zabani worked on the identifying the patents in it. It's really hard work that you have to invest. But then this might help you in the end also on the financial side as innovation, as an investment manager, to somehow work and look a bit into the future, what might be, and I mentioned in the beginning, what might be technologies of the future that might succeed. We're addressing firms' internal and external spheres. You've seen that and what's happening inside the firms, how it then affecting everything around with the AstraZeneca, Oxford University collaboration. And the main concern from a theoretical perspective is that somehow you've seen now that we established a relation not only between crisis and patents, but between innovation management, crisis, and patents. So the originally kind of dyadic relation that we had, the two I presented before at the start, it's now being somehow extended to a triadic relation that we have. And innovation managers, maybe also other, maybe general management, maybe financial managers, might now be better equipped when they really run patent data and patent analytics, because patent data itself, like usually like every data per se is dumb. There's nothing data will tell you when you look at it. Data isn't there to tell you anything. It's just something that you need to use. And then using those pre-ideas and maybe some theory that you developed before and ideas that you have, and then this data becomes live. That's exactly what we did here as a team. It was really great. We've seen how Zabani made it surface the CureVac and Moderna patents in here. Maybe that was a bit lucky also in the end, you never know. Because CureVac was kind of our big, you would say, our big investment. And I mean, still the share price increased massively, but we're all still waiting for the vaccine of CureVac to come out. And the first trials now were not that successful. So we'll see. I mean, this is tricky even with inventions. You never know if a great invention that looks really great at the beginning turns out really into a product or a service, a successful product or service on the market in the end. You never know that. But at least patent analytics might support innovation managers here really in their future decisions, be it on cost savings or where to shift innovation activities, what to do with the royalty, whatever it is in here. And that's so far from, no good research comes without limitations, exactly. So what do we have? Of course, the tricky is that COVID-19 is still ongoing. We'll see how that ends up. So these are just preliminary results, and we're really curious, and hopefully this point of time will be soon, to then see when COVID-19 pandemic is hopefully over, then to look back and see, okay, what did we really somehow hypothesize about it? what we really find out, can still hold or not. And of course, what would be nice also would be to link the patent data that we have, and that's also what you made in the what you mentioned. The poll is one of the most important data sources. Then link it really to financial data, and really get those different kind of data sets together to see how can those different informations that's somehow hidden within the data can be surfaced and combined to even make better decisions for corporates, but also for me as a researcher. I'm super interested in how we could use this to really enlarge our understanding that we have so far of innovation management, of crisis management, and how patents might interact with them. We had only, we've seen here now 2 cases. In our paper, we had 4 cases that are covered. So please, it's still worthwhile to download it and read it, because not only that we present it, but it's much, much more in there. And it's only just a short overview that we presented to you. Of course, it would be great to extend what we have presented here, or what we did kind of in this case study approach, to a more quantitative longitudinal study. So more data in, more firms, more analysis, really a bigger view. Maybe then I'm sure we would see totally different angles as well that might be looked at. So this might be something that future research might be also be tackling. So now we had limitations covered, we had further research covered, we had great results. Thank you so much for your time in here. Now, of course, we have additional time for Q&As, and it would be great to answer your questions. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I have a question for the audience, actually for Carsten. We have spoken about abandoning patents, but how if you have a big decision, you have a certain patent and you want to license those out? How can a company proceed, derive from the patent data from that?
Well, I hope you can hear me again. Yes, thank you. So yes. Something that that you can do if you have identified a set of patents that you might want to out-license is, again, check out on those related companies that might be citing your patent. Could those be potential licensees of the patent? Of course, you then have to consider other aspects. For example, whether or not those that cite your patent might be a competitor. Then you need to reconsider if that is a good opportunity. But in general, by looking into those companies that you have cited or that are citing your patent, so the prior or subsequent art, that might give you an indication of where to go to next. But again, then this is always, please consider this as like a multi-sequential process. Again, you start off with this general heuristic, or these general indicators to identify a set, and then take a closer look, and that will provide you with this opportunity. But definitely, I would take a look into the citations, for example, to identifying potential target licensees there. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Carsten. I also have a question from the audience for Sabami. You have used the keyword, a very specific keyword for the coronavirus. Can patent site also use the technology clusters or an IPC for a specific search? You can also get, as we say, a golden nugget from that as well.
Yes, sure. That's why I said that this is the first step, because as you saw that I showed 2 patents from University of Oxford, but I didn't retrieve the second patent when I did this focused search, because at that point of time it was the interest to find a very keyword specific search that we retrieve the key patents. But once we got the insights from the key patents, it was essential for us to now expand our searches, because I'll cite you the real case example. Moderna and CureVac popped up, but BioNTech didn't, because BioNTech's mRNA technology didn't mention SARS or MERS, but it has a valid mRNA technology. So you are right. Once we understand, once we get the insights, then we use IPC, CPC technology clusters to expand our search in a direction that is provided by this first step. So yes, patent site can do that, and we have done that, and we did a webinar also on that. So, but that's how we went ahead. So yes, you are right, that can be done.
Thank you very much. I also see we have also a link directly for the paper. If someone is interested, you can also download from that. At the moment, I do not see any further questions. So Peter, do you have something very interesting to add?
Well, I've talked already so much, so I'm not sure. Of course, I could add something more, but I think I've talked so much. No, really wanted to stress out that the work with Sabani and Carsten was really great on the project, and it's all this data, and I like working a lot with data and investing in it. But you need to be sure, and that doesn't matter if you're in business or in research. When you really want to work with data, and you see, and when you really want to get as detailed analysis as, for example, Sabani revealed in here, that this is really a massive amount of work and time, and in the end, money for you that you have to invest to really get it closer. Because as mentioned before, itself doesn't help you anything. You really need to prepare it. And everybody says, yeah, we're in the times of big data, and this is really great for the future. Yes, it is. There's an abundance of data. But really to make sense out of it and understand it, this is really a tricky part. Maybe AI might help us sometimes in the future to really dig through it easier and faster, especially faster and cheaper. But right now, to come up with these ideas, and I don't know how you should somewhat train any AI. It's tricky. Like what's abundant? You come from University of Oxford. You come from CureVac, for example, and Moderna, and then make the link to biotech in there, and always have this kind of really knowledge. And that's something that comes from experience when you work with data, and that comes also from working yourself with data, not just relying on somebody else working, but also really getting it and really understanding with data. This makes it really special. So I can only say it's interesting. I would advise everybody to work in data and also look in patent data. And of course, then you could rely on experts that are out there in the market, like Sabani or Carsten, on patent data to support you in there. But in general, I would really advise you use the data that's out there. Is mainly, at least to some extent, the base is freely available. Use that information, and good luck in the future with that. And I'm curious also what we'll find out in the future, especially when COVID-19 is somehow in the end, what we'll see, how our results hold, because that's always also for us, we're just having a short view in the future, but we're not sure if that really came out in the end, or was successful. So we're also waiting for that to see. Thank you.
Peter, I have a question, because now that we got the chance of discussing the paper with the audience, what Carsten did, what I did, how you wrote the paper, this is how we are trying to correlate or connect patent data to the real world. What Carsten is saying is patent data, patent analytics can help you in money management. What I'm saying is patent data can help you in addressing the immediate concerns. Do you think that people will take note of it after COVID-19, the success that is there? Because Carsten and I, we worked on publicly available data. Adidas didn't share anything with us, neither did Oxford University. But do you think that there is hope that this will also get into policy making? Do you see a promise there?
In general, I hope yes, because I think patents provide unique insights on certain views. Of course, they cannot show everything. We still need financial data, see performance coming out, and other data to support it. But of course, it's a view on things that nothing else offers. Somehow, it's revealing secrets. I don't really want to use the word secrets, because that's the exact opposite of patents. They're not trade secrets, because they're publicly available, and that's the trade-off that we give. If somebody gets a patent, the trade-off is we as the public, we get to see what this person has invented, whatever. So this is really the trade-off. And of course, I hope that this really influences how patents are seen. I also hope in general that the COVID-19 and the great success of the firms, like Moderna, like BioNTech, in inventing solutions so fast, that this in general opens the public to science in general, and of course patents then in the end. And some will really help understand that patents are necessary, even though we have lots of discussions now of patent waivers and drop patents for pharmaceuticals, whatever. Totally different story. But of course, yes, I hope what you mentioned, Savani, exactly, that this will also play a bigger role in the future. And we see it in some cases. We see it in some business competition cases, So sometimes patent data also is being used now, not only financial, but also patent data is being used to assess mergers, acquisitions, or some activities like this.
So this is an opportunity for us, patent consultants. This crisis gave this, as you started, this is crisis or this is opportunity. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to show that how valid patent data can be.
Yeah.
I mean, a crisis, like in every good crisis, there's always winners and losers. Or to say, you should never waste a good crisis.
Yeah, so probably we didn't. However we wanted to contribute, we tried.
Yeah. So I see no additional questions from the audience. So I think we have wrapped everything up from our webinar. And as you can see, we have some contact and some resource information, as you can see. And I want to wish everyone a very good day and stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.